During the massive galactic war against the deadly, terrifying forces of hell itself, millions of civilizations would fall victim to this foe, as their souls are extracted and turned into mindless drones, killing anything in their way to add to the Dark Lord's forces. Humanity on Earth and Mars were enslaved and slaughtered in their masses, and the same applied for the people of Argent, known as the Argenta. But during this war, one ancient civilization older than the rest was left unharmed by the forces of hell, and their home planet was unable to be touched by the Dark Lord himself, as he went about his galactic enslavement campaign. This civilization, however, would be backstabbing and see themselves as gods compared to all the other civilizations within the realms. But the reasons for their betrayals and why the Dark Lord didn't enslave them was for selfish reasons, to help get their society back on track. This race was known as the Maykrs, a godly being if seen up close, wearing golden armor and floating off the ground when they move. A very daunting and mysterious creature that would go around the universe forcing those to worship them and help them in their selfish quests. But who were the Maykrs? Where did they come from? And what did they believe? And what ultimately happened to their society which led them to betray those who worshipped them, turning them into drones for the Dark Lord himself? Well, in today's video we look at the backstory, physiology and culture of the Maykrs, as well as their home planet of Urdak. This is the lore behind the godlike beings known as the Maykrs. When first looking at the Maykrs, you get a real sense that they are in fact like angelic beings. Their golden armor matched with their floating movement, and their golden wings almost ticks the boxes of what we have always envisioned a holy angel to look like in paintings and other works of art. One that came down from the heavens to guide humanity to what is good and pure in life. To a lot of people, heaven and the idea of angels were always there before anything else came into existence, and they were in fact the messengers of God or whatever greater power was up there. The Maykrs are in fact somewhat similar to those descriptions of what we see as heavenly beings, and kind of explain why humanity would have these images of what an angel looked like. Millions of years ago, way before Earth, humanity and even the Argenta were created. There was nothing until there was. Sorry, I just couldn't resist putting the Destiny reference in there. It had to be done. Out in the void of space where darkness was the only thing to be seen, a mystical being with no physical presence was said to have created the planet of Urdak, the home of the Maykrs. According to the scarce Maykr records, the ageless being was known as the Father and was said to create hundreds of planets and life forms all over the universe, with their first planet being the realm known as Jekad. Jekad was first set up to really see what creations the Father could make and have them all prosper within this realm, with no limitations at all and complete free will. For years this realm did in fact prosper, as it was run under the rule of a being known as Davoth. However, Davoth realized that the people of Jekad were indeed mortal, and to him this was seen as weak and limited. Davoth therefore sought to eliminate death from Jekad and make sure that everyone there became immortal. But this is where the Maker's creation gets confusing. According to some texts, the Father created them, splitting his being and creating them from his own essence, allowing them to be completely immortal. However, it is also said that Davoth was in fact the original creator of the Maykrs, however utilized the Father, betraying him to create this immortal race. It meant that Davoth could create those immortal beings he spoke so highly of. Death could be overcome, and the Maykrs were the next stage in evolution, a being that literally could not die. But Davoth had supposedly gone against the Father, and it was labelled as the ultimate betrayal in the history books. The Father couldn't have Davoth take over everything he believed he created, so he sealed Jekad off from everywhere else, meaning Davoth and his initial creations were trapped forever in that realm. Davoth was furious with the Father's actions and claimed that he had been betrayed as well. The realm of Jekad then continued on, but became more and more corrupt over time, with the beings becoming much deadlier and vicious. Eventually Jekad, once a prosperous land supposedly created by the Father that was to encourage life to have free will, became a corrupted wasteland, and eventually formed into what we now know as Hell itself. Davoth, mad with rage, became what was now known as the Dark Lord, and the first ruler of Hell, with one sole mission, which was to eventually seek down the Father and destroy him once and for all. Returning to Urdak, this newly created planet where the Maker society was now growing, the Father made sure to erase all records regarding the Dark Lord, and it was here where their true creator was erased from the history books. It turns out that in fact Davoth was indeed their creator, and the Makers were just his experimental beings used to seek out immortality. The Father couldn't have the Makers knowing about their true creator and destroyed all of the records, meaning that for years on end, the Makers worshipped the Father and only him. In their eyes, he was their creator. He had made Urdak. He had made every living being in existence, and the Dark Lord, Davoth, was the usurper, the one who had betrayed the Father, and the one who had to be stopped. After this, Urdak, the heavenly-looking realm of the Makers, continued to prosper where they would endlessly work together to worship the Father and do his bidding, unknowing of their true history. When the Makers were first created, they were created as a hive mind. All of them thought relatively the same things, however they were all allowed to be independent from one another, although saying that they had to abide by all of the rules of their leader. This created set roles within their society. One of the most important roles within their society was known as the Seraphs, or Seraphim, a Maker who was utterly devoted to serving the Father's every need. This Maker looked after their holy building known as the Luminarium, the first thing to be created on Urdak, the place where the Father's essence would eventually be present, and the creations of the Makers took place. The second role would be the most important within their society. This was known as the Khan Maker, and a very interesting process was undertaken in order to create the leader of the Maker race. Every 10,000 years the Maker race would undergo the change in leadership, with a new Khan Maker forming. Here they would undergo a process which was relatively unknown, where a few of the lesser Makers would fuse together to create a new Khan Maker, allowing the old one to voluntarily die. The new Khan Maker would then determine the genetics, consciousness, and destiny of the Maker race, meaning that it was physically impossible for any of the other lesser Makers to go against the Khan Maker herself. This process, however, required the essence of the Father to help them with this transformation process, as well as the Father's input as to who will be the Khan Maker themselves. It is not stated why they needed the essence specifically, but it is believed that with the Father's essence, it allowed them to continue to live for 10,000 years without degradation, and allowed them to continue to be immortal and carry on spreading the word of the Father. With the new Khan Maker being formed every 10,000 years, the Maker race would have to follow their every word and undertake any task they wanted. Lesser Makers did not fully share the same physiology as the Khan Maker, however, and would be much smaller in stature. Their whole appearance depended on their class and age. Maker drones, for example, are believed to be much younger than those higher up, and probably of a different class as well. Being quite small and no arms present at all, they are also said to be too weak to travel outside of their home planet of Urdak as well, as any interdimensional travel would tear them apart, again showing that they are the weaker Makers. Higher Makers, however, have arms on either side, are much taller, and also don far fancier armor than that of the drones, displaying that they are either older than the drones or are from a higher class. These Makers, however, are able to travel outside of Urdak, as their build would be able to take the strain of interdimensional travel. Urdak itself, mentioned a few times now, really displayed itself to be a spitting image of what we would imagine an angelic world to look like. However, this is because their whole civilization is so far in advance in terms of technology that if they were to appear in front of another race, they would be seen as a godly being, as was seen with the Argenta when they first came into contact with the Makers. Their technology allowed them to wear extremely resistant armor, power equipment never seen before, that could destroy an enemy that threatened them, and they just stood out so much more than any other race in the galaxy. But despite their civilization living in harmony in their incredible realm of Urdak, unable to die and following their traditions of creating a Khan Maker every 10,000 years to help guide them in their ever-ending quest to spread the word of the Father, there would be a problem, as the Father's quest to erase the presence of Hell and the Dark Lord overwhelmed him. Despite the Father sealing off Davoth and Jekar from everywhere else, the Dark Lord was still able to send out demonic legions into other realms, wiping them out and slaying lesser gods that had been created by the Father. This angered the Father, but it also allowed Davoth Davroth the ability to get stronger as he sat within Jekkar, biding his time before trying to hit back at the usurper. The father couldn't take this anymore and had to stop him. The father returned to Jekkar, which was now known as Hell, to face Davroth once and for all. On the top of the Pyramid of the Lost, where the father was once worshipped before Davroth's takeover, the father ripped the Dark Lord's life sphere from his chest, defeating him. However, as the father once loved Davroth and favoured him, he was unable to destroy his life essence, meaning Davroth wouldn't be ended once and for all. Instead, he placed it within the Temple of Souls within Ingmor's sanctum, leaving Hell contained, but this time without the Dark Lord's presence. This event, however, left the father feeling conflicted, and because of it, he withdrew from the physical realm, placing his essence inside a life sphere, where the Seraph Samur Maykr stored it within the Luminarium, to be used for when the race needed to create a new Khan Maykr, and also made himself a martyr for the Maykr race. The Maykr race would continue to live their way, using their essence to continue their Khan Maykr process, as well as seeing the Luminarium as their holy place. But after the next 10,000 years and the new selection of the Khan Maykr, the Maykr race would be hit with a problem that would mean their race would be near extinction. After the father's disappearance, the Maykr civilization was searching the different realms to find other races that would be able to do their bidding and basically see the Maykrs as their own gods. Here they travelled to Argent, a recently created civilization that worshipped the magical creatures known as the Wraiths. But the appearance of the Maykr race instantly swayed them over, believing them to be godly beings because of their image and their technology. The Argenta quickly started worshipping them as their new gods and were gifted the Maykrs technology in payment for their loyalty. Meanwhile, the Seraphim at the time known as Samur was told by the father that he had to store the father's life sphere in a place that no one could find it. This was all because of the rising danger from Hell once again. Samur agreed to do it, knowing full well this would brand him as a heretic by the Maykr race. But for the good of the universe and the father, Samur knew he had to do it, or the father could be destroyed once and for all. Samur then returned to Argent, where he was then made as one of the High Counselors for the Khan Maykr. However, at this time during their rule on Argent, the Khan Maykr was plagued with the vision of a man known as the Unholy One, or the Destroyer, who would wipe out the Maykr race. This was not helped by the appearance of a strange individual on Argent, who ranted and raved about creatures overwhelming them, killing everyone around him. And soon after his appearance, the demon invasion started, and the Argenta were overwhelmed by Hell's forces, almost wiping them out, including the Maykrs on that planet. Samur, who was the personal servant for the father, played a huge role within the invasion of Argent, as he guided the Night Sentinels into battle, helping them take out a major demonic assault led by a monstrous titan known as the Dreadnought. During this battle, this mysterious man known as the Doom Guy was guided by Samur into a machine known as the Divinity Machine. Originally, this machine was to check for impurities within the soul to see who was a danger to the Maykr race. However, for some unknown reason, when the stranger stepped foot into the machine, the Divinity Machine transformed the Doom Guy into the Doom Slayer, enhancing his speed, ferocity, and human abilities to make the demons absolutely fear him. He had now become a true threat in the eyes of the forces of Hell, wiping out the Dreadnought Titan. And as Samur said, they will now fear him. Because of the use of the Divinity Machine that the Khan Maykr said they cannot use, the Khan Maykr and the rest of the Maykr race saw it as the ultimate betrayal, and Samur was exiled from Urdak for good. He had not only made the father disappear, costing them the essence which they needed to continue their cycle, he had now gone against the Khan Maykr and used the Divinity Machine when told not to. Samur was told to never come back to his homeland, and instead travelled down to Earth, with his consciousness being transferred into a cloned human, undergoing the name of Dr. Samuel Hayden. The reason for this was to help humanity out when it inevitably encountered the demon invasion when discovering Argent energy. But now, the Maykr race was doomed. They had no idea where the father's essence was, meaning they could not undergo the tradition of creating a new Khan Maykr, meaning the Maykr race was slowly dying, with no way of being able to regenerate their physical appearance. But as the war with Hell raged on, the Khan Maykr would take drastic steps that would betray those who looked up to them, but would help them live on and fulfill their traditions. With the war raging on in almost every planet in the galaxy, it was clear that any realm the demons got to, there was going to be an overwhelming loss of innocent lives. During Samur's time on Earth, now as Dr. Samuel Hayden, he and the father knew it was only a matter of time before the demons invaded Earth and wiped them out. But they also knew it was only a matter of time before the humans discovered an energy used by the demons called Argent energy. With this information, Samuel Hayden utilized Maykr technology and transferred the father's mind into a complex AI known as Vega, meaning the father could help his creations out and safeguard them against hell whilst also being out of sight from the Dark Lord. Eventually the humans would go on to discover the essence known as Argent energy and would start the invasion of demons on Mars, wiping out millions of innocent lives. But the humans weren't the only ones to discover this energy. Whilst the battle against hell raged on back on Argenta, some of the demons had been captured by the Night Sentinels and were locked up to be tortured by the priests of the Deg. Whilst they tortured the demons under the watchful eye of the Khan Maykr, they discovered that this energy was in fact helping them to become bigger creatures, changing their physiology, healing them, and making them much more vicious. Torturing them also helped them discover how to extract the essence. Argent energy was produced when the soul of the being underwent mental and physical trauma. This then gave the Khan Maykr a solution to all of her race's problems. The Argent energy could help them heal. It could allow them to survive as a species and be able to create a new Khan Maykr, as it had now been over 10,000 years since she was last made into the Khan Maykr, something that was never meant to happen. But the only way the Khan Maykr could extract the essence was to make a deal with hell themselves, something that went against everything the Makers believed and would also betray the Night Sentinels, who had put their lives on the line to protect the Makers from the demons of hell. The Khan Maykr couldn't wait any long, however. It had been over 10,000 years since the last Khan Maykr was made, and her race was unable to make any more of their race. They had to make a deal. The Khan Maykr went to the Dark Lord of Hell and made a secret pact with him. Here she would be able to harvest the flow of Argent energy from hell to Urdak, allowing her race to survive and thrive once again. With this deal done, the Khan Maykr agreed to open up portals to all the different realms, allowing hell to slaughter anyone and anything in its way to gather more souls, meaning the Dark Lord could regain his strength, and this also allowed the Khan Maykr to gather more Argent energy for her civilization. The Khan Maykr also created new soul spires within Necrovault to speed up this process of gathering souls for Argent energy. Here she abused her power and utilized slaves from the Argenta to construct these spires, and then using their souls to gather more resources. The Night Sentinels on their charge into hell discovered this horrific act of betrayal and saw how the Khan Maykr had been using their people to bolster the enemy forces. But despite this discovery, some of the Night Sentinels did not want to believe this conspiracy, leading to a massive civil war amongst their ranks, which then led to some of the Night Sentinels pushing away all of their beliefs in support of the Maykr race. This included the Argenta priests, who wanted the energy for themselves. On top of this, the Khan Maykr also forced Commander of the Night Sentinels Valen into Argenta's sacred hidden away area, where their old gods, the Wraiths, were housed. Here the Khan Maykr took the Wraiths and dragged them down to hell to be used as a well, which would create an unlimited energy source for hell. Not only had the Khan Maykr abused and enslaved the people of Argent, the people who looked up to them, she had also enslaved and tortured their original gods. The civil war and the unholy wars raged on, and it looked like all hope was gone. Hell's forces were multiplying as the Khan Maykr had allowed them to gain more drones for their forces through humans and Argenta civilians. Even some of the betrayed Night Sentinels would be added to the forces of hell in the form of marauders. But the Makers wanted more. They wanted to make sure their civilization lived on, especially being one of the earliest creations in the system. Utilizing Valen's son's heart, the Khan Maykr would awaken a titan known as the Icon of Sin that would be used to completely eradicate all of humanity on Earth. However, awakening the Icon of Sin would be the Maker's undoing. Thanks to Dr. Samuel Hayden and Vega, the Doomslayer was able to stop the procession and released it from Maykr control. This broke the seal that was keeping Urdak safe from Hell's invasion, breaking the deal made by the Dark Lord and the Khan Maykr, meaning demons could invade their land in their masses. This led Urdak to fall into chaos, with the Khan Maykr trying to fight against the Slayer to protect their land. But it was too late. The divinity machine had made the Slayer way too strong and was able to destroy the Khan Maykr. He was the one she had nightmares of. He was the unholy one, the destroyer. The Maykr race was finished. Nothing could save them from the forces of hell, or the wrath of the remaining Night Sentinels and the Doomslayer. Their greed and backstabbing nature to save themselves from extinction had ironically helped lead them to extinction, and the one they ultimately worshipped from the offset, the Father, along with Samur and the Doomslayer, were the ones to put them to an end. Maybe it was time for the immortal race to meet with mortality, and with the Makers out of the question, maybe it was time for Davoth, the original creator of everything, and one who wanted to embrace immortality, for him to also experience what it was like to finally meet his end at the hands of the Slayer. But that is the lore behind the Maykr race. I apologise if I got some of the details wrong or if it was a bit confusing at times. The Maykrs are a hard race to understand because they are so ancient and a lot of their history has been erased by the Father. But regardless, I hope you were at least entertained by this video and found it a fun watch. If you did like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. I'll also leave a link to my other lore playlists below, as well as the links to my social media pages. And if you really like this video, then I'll also leave my links to my Patreon if you want to financially support this channel. And speaking of which, I'd like to thank my patrons real quick. Big thanks to our big fish Duquesne23 and Rhino Head, our sharks JP, Connor the AVP man, and our new guy Ryan Garnham, as well as our 3 huge megalodons Sinus, JJD896 and Well Such Gaming. Also big thanks to our YouTube channel member, our wise one Jambu, as well as my subscribers over on Twitch. All your support means the absolute world to me, it really does. Okay, that is all for now. A big thank you for helping this channel reach 10,000 subs. I honestly cannot believe we are at that level, and I'm so grateful for all the support. But that's everything for now. Thanks again, and see you all in the next one. Cheers.